Good morning. All right, I can't hear you guys this morning. Good morning. Yes, welcome. We're glad to see you. I'm Althea Brooks, and I'm Senior Director of Lifetime Learning in the Office of Engagement here at the University of Virginia. And it's a pleasure to welcome you back to More Than the Score. We have 2 remaining More Than the Scores after today's talk. I hope you'll attend and you'll share it with friends. As I always say, we partner with the Alumni Association to bring you these great lectures on Saturday mornings before the home football game. I hope you're enjoying it this season. Also, welcome to our at-home guests visiting us from around the world. Okay, before we begin, go ahead and silence the ringer on your phone. Hold your questions to the end. And when you ask a question, please talk right into that microphone. We need to hear your question and say your name and your UVA affiliation. Okay, it's my pleasure to welcome our speaker for the morning, Marcy Linton. She's with the Department of Drama. So let me go ahead and introduce her. But before I do, go ahead and give her a warm More Than a Score welcome. Marcy Linton is the Associate Professor of Costume Technology in the Department of Drama in the College and Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. Marcy has worked extensively as a first-hand draper in theaters nationwide, including the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, the Colorado Shakespeare Festival, the Tony Award-winning Utah Shakespeare Festival, Playwriters Repertory, and Animal Planet. In 2019, Marcy published the book, A Historical Pattern Archive. She's working on her next book project focusing on UVA's historical clothing collection. Marcy has received her MFA from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and her BFA from North Carolina School of Arts. Please help me welcome and thank Marcy Linton for being our speaker for More Than Score this morning. Thank you, Marcy.
Thank you very much. Before I get started, I just wanted to thank the people that have sent me questions ahead of time. They were all amazing, incredible questions that really sparked my interest, and I'm going to do my best to hopefully answer them while I'm talking. But it's a large subject, so I don't think I'm going to get to all of them, but I'll do my best. So I'm going to talk about fast fashion today, and then sustainability. But first I want to sort of describe what is fast fashion. So this is a term that a lot of people have been sort of talking about recently, but what is it and how do we identify what that is? So first of all, when we think about this term, this is a fairly new term that has just started to happen in the last maybe 20 years or maybe even 10 years since we've started hearing about this. And in the past, we used to source our own materials. We would source the people that were going to make our garments. We might make our garments, so we knew where everything was coming from. And then as things sort of progressed, we get to about the 1990s and everything sort of picked up. And we were sold this idea that more is better. So everything became faster. We started believing we needed more stuff. And then the economy sort of followed us so that would accommodate what we needed or thought we wanted. So first of all, for something to be fast fashion or even ultra fast, which is another term that is starting to be used, the clothes tend to be extremely cheap and very trendy. So the quality, and I'm sure a lot of us have seen this in a lot of the things. So there's certain stores that I used to shop at 20, 30 years ago that I still have items from those stores. But then I can buy something from one of those stores that I might have gotten 2 years ago, and it's already destroyed or it's already falling apart. So it's cheap quality. It's a quick turnover. So we used to have basically 4 seasons excuse me, of clothes that we would wear, sometimes sometimes more like 2 seasons, and the transitional stuff we were dipping into one of the first 2 seasons, summer, winter. But now there's literally, within the fast fashion system, 52 different seasons. So they're changing what we think we need every single week. So it's a very quick turnover. And it meets our demands. So we've been led to believe that we need more. We need to stay with these trends. We see celebrities wearing a certain thing, or there's a garment on the catwalk, and then within a week or two, we can see that trend in the store, and so we're buying it. So we want to be ahead of the curve. We want to feel like we're part of those trends, and because of that, it's sort of perpetuated this fast fashion model. And how did we actually get here? Well, I mentioned a few of those things. We were led to believe we should be here, right? And then it's also being offered to us in a way that is appealing. So the lower the price of the stuff becomes that we're purchasing or we think we want, the more we actually go out there and buy it. So that $20, shirt that we thought we needed is now $10, and now it's on sale, and we just keep perpetuating this system. And then because of that, the whole system becomes this cycle of getting the trend out, we buy it, and then the next trend comes, and somehow we've been led to believe that we have to move on. So, we all ended up with skinny jeans during the 90s, and then suddenly they all went to flared leg overnight, and we are led to believe that we need to follow that. And then they go back down again. So these trends come and go so fast, and we are convinced as consumers that we need to keep up with that. So social media helps this too. A lot of times, you wear a garment to an event, you get photographed in it, it gets put on social media, that stops you from wearing it again, so it goes in the closet. Instead of in the past when we used to wear a garment somewhere and the people that were at that event would have seen us, but it didn't stop us from wearing it again maybe 3 months later to the wedding we had to go to or the ball we were invited to. Now, because of social media taking that photograph, we feel like it's been memorialized and we can't wear it again. Because what if we're photographed and it's put back on social media and people recognize that we're wearing it again? A few statistics about what the fast fashion world is doing. First of all, it produces and these are approximate numbers, 150 billion garments a year. How can we possibly wear that many garments? How do we need that many garments? When I teach this in class, I do a survey at the beginning of each section, and I ask my students, and it's a class of between 30 and 35 kids, to make a list of how many garments they brought to UVA with them when they came. I don't want to know what they left at home. I have them leave out the essentials like the undergarments, but I say, I want to know how many items you brought. And on average, every single section will have brought between 3,000 and 3,500 garments out of 30 to 36 kids every section. So then I think, well, now I know what's happening to that 150 billion garments. If we all have that many, and why do we need them? So there's a lot of production out there, and what's happening to all the dead stock? So when garments are sold at a particular store and then they're replacing them almost every week, there's got to be stuff that's not being sold, right? So all of that is then being sent somewhere also and not being sold. And a lot of times it's just being baled up and sent someplace to go into a landfill. Speaking of that, fashion is one of the largest polluting industries, second only to oil in the world. So it's contributing in a lot of different ways. First of all, it's one of the largest polluters of clean water globally. And that's because during the processing, and a lot of this is out of sight, out of mind, because we don't see it here in the US, but just for instance, to tan leathers, there's over 170 chemicals in that process There's also highly toxic dyes that are being used because we're using synthetic fibers that don't allow the dye to absorb into that fiber the same as a natural fiber. So the dyes have to be an entirely different makeup in order to color those synthetic fibers. Well, that's all being done in countries with no regulations. So they're literally dumping daily all of this water into the systems that is quite literally circulating the earth, and they have found heavy metals in polar bears in the Arctics that are the kind of heavy metals that are being used in a lot of these processes. So our waters, for instance, are regularly being polluted because of this system. That harms, it's also polluting our farmlands because of the amount of fiber that has to be produced for this. First of all, cotton, which is a huge, it's one of the largest fibers that is being sort of grown and farmed for this particular industry. They can no longer, cotton in its own natural sort of cycle, they cannot produce enough cotton for the demand that's being requested. So they're using GMO cotton, which then has to have a lot more pesticides, a lot more herbicides. So that's going into the soil. A lot of these fibers are being forced to be used in a different way. So because of that, that's polluting our ground. And then the fact that the textiles themselves are made out of a synthetic fiber, they don't break down. And if they're producing 150 billion a year, and we have to keep buying in order to maintain that, what we're not wearing anymore goes in the trash. And that is also creating a huge problem. But that's all being sent overseas and being left, along the shorelines and in the dumps of other countries, not necessarily here in the United States. So we also think that when we donate our clothes, that a lot of it is being resold or reused, and only 1% of the clothing that gets donated actually gets resold or reused. The rest of it is being baled up and sent overseas. So there's evidence of one of the places that it goes is Ghana, which is having there's a huge problem there because of textile waste. There's also, it's so large, there's a textile dump in Chile that is so large, you can see it from from satellite. You can see this dump, and it's all textile waste that's being sent there because they don't know what else to do with it, so they're dumping it in the desert. So there's a lot of different places that this is accumulating because we think we're donating clothes and they're not being resold because there's not enough people buying. A lot of people donate stuff that can't be resold instead of finding another resource to take care of that. It's also the second biggest contributor to 40 million people living in modern slavery. So if you think about how are they making 150 billion garments for the prices that we're actually paying? There has to be, so the price of everything has slowly gone down, and the numbers of what we're buying has gone up. So it's got to be produced by a certain number of people. Well, those people, they're getting paid less and less, and the factories that are actually producing this stuff is getting more pinched and pinched. It's not the companies that are suffering from this, but the money has to be pinched somewhere. It's the factories that are suffering from this and the people that are literally making this stuff. So most of the stuff that we're getting from fast fashion, the majority of it, is not being made by anybody that's making a living wage. Some of these companies will say that they work with factories that pay a minimum wage, but if you look at the countries that it's being made in, a minimum wage is far below what it would take to have a living wage and survive there. And they're also making that minimum wage working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. So you really have to look into that too and see where your garments are being made and how, sort of the ethics behind the places that are using those factories. And then, unfortunately, although it is one of the largest industries, it is one of the most unregulated industries. So a lot of these companies will have their own code of ethics, but they can state their code of ethics, but there's really nothing enforcing them. There's nothing that stands behind that besides them just with good faith saying, this is what we're doing for these people, or this is what we're doing for our planet, this is where we're sourcing stuff. So a few of the brands that we can say right off the bat, that maybe when we talk about fast fashion, we have heard of some of these brands, and it's easy to identify these fast fashion brands. And some, H&M, always brought up, Zara, Topshop, Gap sometimes, but Shein. Those are some of the biggest ones that people talk about all the time. There's also Misguided, Forever 21. Boohoo is actually considered an ultra fast fashion because they're getting things out even faster, believe it or not. And then Fashion Nova, Old Navy. These are some of the more obvious places that you can look at and see some of the different things that I've talked about as far as how to identify what is fast fashion. There's a lot more out there. I'm just touching on a few of these. But there's also other ones that we would like to think, they're a little bit higher quality as far as we think they are because the prices that they're charging, they feel a little bit different. But there's a lot of things about different companies that we necessarily don't think about when we go to shop at those stores. And I can confess that in the past, I have graced the doorstep of a few of the places on this list before I delved into this much more passionately and really got my head wrapped around it. But there's some that feel a little bit more hidden, and they might have some stuff that they're trying to do to be better, but ultimately they're not changing the system that they work within or their business in a way that will affect a good change. So let's move on to luxury brands, because we all would like to think that if we spend a little bit more money for quality goods, that we're getting something that ultimately means it's sustainable. But that doesn't mean that doesn't really stand true for some of these different places. Now, I'm not saying all brands that are luxury are not making an effort and doing a good job, but we have to really think about where it is we're going to shop before we sort of invest our money in that place. So unfortunately, a lot of the luxury brands that we like and are used to work right along the fast fashion companies in the same exact factories and in the same exact countries to have their stuff produced. So they're not necessarily being transparent about their means of how they're having this stuff made or who's making it. There are some companies out there that will destroy excess goods to not oversaturate the market with their goods. So if something is becoming popular, they will take things off the market and just literally have it trashed or bailed up and sent to another country because they don't want the market oversaturated so they can keep the price high. That's contributing to waste. There's also the biggest problem, and another thing, most luxuries companies don't have that 52-season model. They used to be more like 2 seasons of stuff. But in order to keep up with the fast fashion, they have gone up to as many as 8 seasons so that they can still turn things over at a little bit higher rate than they normally would. But the biggest problem with luxury brands is their use of fur and exotic animal skins. So they're not delving into the concern of animal welfare at all while they're producing and trying to stay in that luxury, because some of those particular items are very identifiable with luxury brands. That's one of the biggest problems that they have. So I've talked about, that sometimes when I get to this point in my class, my students have a look on their face like, should I even have clothes on? Like, I don't know what to do. And so I have to sort of move into a different place. So first of all, before I talk about how to find some things that are sustainable, I would like to talk about greenwashing. So there's a lot of companies out there that do this, and this is another new term that seems to be coming out. But what do I mean by greenwashing? So there will be companies out there that try to use sustainable tactics to actually cover up what's going on. So you might feel inspired to start looking up companies and see what their reports say, see what they're doing, and you'll find a big lofty report that says in all of our corporate offices we now use solar, we've lessened our carbon footprint, we're using all recyclable non-single-use plastics for our dinnerware and our whatever's cups and stuff in our offices, or we're using all recycled materials in our packaging. But if you get farther down that report, you'll see that they're saying nothing about their clothing, they're saying nothing about the system, and they're saying absolutely nothing about the ethical treatment of their garment makers. So are they really making a difference? Probably not. I'm sure they're making a difference in their own office, but are they making a difference on the big picture? There also might be reports that say that they are, all of their workers make at the least minimum wage, but there's nothing else that says, are their workers being treated fairly? Are they getting time off? Are they compensated? Or were they, this is a big one, were they taken care of and compensated through COVID-19? We actually kept shopping. We spent more money during the pandemic, and because of that, more stuff had to be produced. Well, who was putting our blue jeans and our t-shirts on the racks for us? Sending them to Amazon so we could buy them online? Somebody had to make those, and a lot of those people were forced to go to work, were given no protection, and or they were given no time off. And if they did have to leave because they were sick, they lost their job because there was somebody else that needed it as desperately as they did. So a lot of these companies did not compensate people during the pandemic. You can look for reports on that. So just being able to say that your factories actually pay minimum wage doesn't really mean a lot. The biggest thing that you need to also see is what's on the label. There are some companies that are out there that will have, quote unquote, a consciousness label on their garments. They might say that it's a sustainable line that they're selling, but it might be literally 1% of their whole company. The rest, they're still putting stuff out on the floor, they're still changing it weekly, they're still promoting fast fashion, but they have this small consciousness line that makes you feel better to still shop at that fast fashion store because you're getting something that you think, quote unquote, is going to be sustainable, when really it's probably not in the big picture. So, like I said, how do you possibly get out from under all this and feel like you're living sustainably? Well, first of all, sustainable fashion, how do we define that? How do we know we have something that we're not adding to the system? We want to know that it's produced socially and ecologically responsible. And that includes all areas of the supply chain. So you want to know that the company is sourcing their materials in a place that is ethical, that the people that are growing those fibers are being treated properly. You want to know that the production in that chain is being made by people that are being treated fairly. And you want to know that it's being distributed the same way, that you're maybe using minimal packaging, you're buying less of it, they're actually conscious of how they're actually getting it to you. And then the consumption. Are they doing anything with the stuff at the end of its life? Does the company actually have a circular model inside of it? So, stated, I think, very well by British designer Vivienne Westwood, buy less, choose well, and make it last. So I say this to all of my students: the clothes that you already have hanging in your closet are the most sustainable item you own. You've already taken it out of the system. You should like it because you bought it, right? So it's something that you probably will wear or have worn. So make the best of what you already have. Don't add it to the system of trash. Don't donate it places unless you've thought about it. Use it. You already own it. It's out of the system. Make the best of it. I want to break down what Vivienne Westwood said a little bit farther. So let's start with buy less. First of all, do we really need multiples of the same item? How many times have we gone out, seen, let's say, a blazer that fit us perfectly, so we decide we need it in 5 different colors because we haven't found it in a different style? Do we really need all 5 colors? That's all I'm saying. Do we need that many multiples? Do my students need 3,000 garments to survive a semester at UVA? And how many of those garments are they actually wearing? When I come to class and everybody's wearing athleisure wear, I think, is there 3,000 pieces of athleisure wear in their closets? How many times, where are we actually dressing for all of that? And how many seasons are we really dressing for? We're not dressing for 52 seasons. I certainly am not. I have my summer clothes. I have my winter clothes. I do dip into each one depending on the spring and fall seasons. But am I really dressing for that many seasons? And how do you define those seasons? How do you actually say, well, I'm in season 40, so what does that look like? So do we really need that many garments to spread over seasons that don't necessarily exist? And then this is a good one, renting garments for one-time occasions. I mentioned this earlier where you get a garment and you wear it to an occasion. You go to a wedding, you want to buy a specific garment, but then it hangs in the closet and you never wear it again. Why not rent those garments? Why not find companies where you can rent that one-time garment and not have to have it hang in your closet? Because if you're the kind of person that doesn't want to wear it again, then find an alternative to that. There's a lot of different places out there for this. And you can find all of this stuff you can find online. But a couple of them are Rent the Runway. That's a place where you can rent stuff online. And Nuuly, which is Nuuly. Both of those places have really nice garments that are top brands that you can rent for a one-time occasion. There's also another place called Armoire, which rents women's business wear. So you could, if you want to, I've done this where I didn't want to repeat an outfit in a semester, and I hate to admit that I have enough clothes to do that. But you could rent stuff and literally not be seen wearing it again after the month or week is up that you rented it for, if you want to actually do that. And also you could invest in versatile garments. So if you want those 5 colors of blazers, make sure they actually work in the summer and the winter, right? So get things that you know are going to be versatile and not stick within a particular idea that you can't wear it other places. Choose well. So first of all, make your purchase worth it, and don't therapy shop. So many times we decide, well, I'm just going to go shopping. I'll feel better once I get something. Or let's say we're walking past the window of a store and we see an amazing item and we go in there and we just can't leave without it. We get home, we put it on, or it shows up in the mail, and we can't figure out what made us decide we thought we needed it. Because it doesn't look like, it just doesn't look like it's ours. It doesn't fit right. It doesn't look that well on us. And a lot of times, we don't take the time to take it back. It sits in our closet, maybe long enough that it's not even in style anymore. So then when we do donate it someplace, it won't sell. Or, eventually it just gets thrown in we throw it out or get rid of it in a way, and the thing's never been used. So don't therapy shop. Impulse buy, and think about it. Think about what you're actually purchasing. Research quality brands. You can look up I mean, with Google and the internet, there isn't a brand that you can't find and investigate what's happening with that brand. Think about what you want before you buy it. If you want to buy from certain stores that aren't necessarily sustainable, make sure you're applying to that item all of the principles of making it worth it. Keep it, take care of it, make it yours, and hang on to it. If you're going to take it out of the system, leave it out of the system. And you can always buy secondhand. So a lot of times when you say this to some people, they immediately think, well, I don't really want to go to the Goodwill or shop at places like that because I can never find what I want. There's so many more options out there. You can, if you want to buy secondhand online, there's a ton of different places. There's Poshmark, Curtsy, ThreadUp. All of those places will have really nice quality stuff. You're not necessarily going to see, unfortunately, the things that do get donated to some of these different places that, for instance, the Goodwill, you can find some really nice things. But if they're donating their fast fashion, it's already probably, it's nice that it's getting out of the system again, but it's probably worn out enough that it's not of the quality that you're going to get it, and it's only going to last maybe 2 wears because a few wears have already been put into it. So maybe try to find secondhand places that are a little bit high quality. You can always find a nice high-end consignment store too. There's plenty of places out there that will sell luxury brands just to get them off the market. And it doesn't matter what the price is, even if it's half off, even if you have an issue with buying something secondhand, it literally could have been an impulse buy by the person that got it, and then they ended up giving it to one of these places, so you're taking something out of the system. We need to start thinking of secondhand that way, that it isn't just buying used clothes, it's taking something out of the system that's going to end up probably in the dump. And then make it last. Read the instructions on how to take care of it. How many times have we purchased something, not read the care instructions, thrown it in the wash, and it either shrinks 2 sizes and we can never wear it again, or it shouldn't even have been put in the wash at all. We don't look at the fibers that are in it, so we don't know how to actually treat it, and we don't take the time to take care of the garment that we have. Also, a huge thing that, because a lot of our textiles are made of synthetic fibers, they shed little tiny microfibers constantly through their entire life. When you're wearing them, when they're hanging in your closet, it doesn't matter. Especially every time you put something in the wash that's a microfiber, it is shedding, a synthetic fiber, it's shedding those microfibers. There's ways to sort of help that. One of them is wash less. Sometimes, and my students always are wide-eyed at this one, I will say you do not have to wash a garment every single time it touches your body. You could wear it a second time, especially if it's a big sweatshirt that's not even touching your skin. If it's a pair of blue jeans that's going to wear out every time, because jeans inherently look better and better over time as you wear them. But wash stuff a little bit less. If you do want to wash it more often, you really don't have to use the amount of detergent that usually a lot of us just pour detergent in. It usually only takes a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons to wash even a large load of laundry correctly. You can also use something called a guppy bag, which is a large laundry bag that you can put your clothes in that are synthetic fibers. And what that does, it's small enough that it traps a lot of those microfibers in the bag. And then when you're done washing and drying the garment, you can turn the bag inside out and sort of throw those little microfibers in the trash. You're still creating them, but at least you're putting them in the trash and they're not like filtering down more into the water system. It's, and you could also hang dry your clothes. You could wash them in cold water. Things that say dry cleanable don't necessarily always have to be dry clean. A lot of times, and I worked in the industry for a few years, it's easier to just write just to add that dry clean label and not worry about the person saying my garment shrunk or my garment did this. when it's not always necessary to, if you look at the fiber content, you can frequently hand wash that garment and hang dry it, and you do not have to have it dry cleaned. Dry cleaners use very toxic solvents in their process, which then gets filtered into the water also. Not to mention it's leaving residue on your garments that you're then putting back on your body. So if you have to have something dry cleaned, I would suggest you look for an eco-friendly dry cleaner that does not use solvents. They use different methods to wash and dry clean your garments. But you can, if you're worried about it, you can always have a conversation with those places because they're usually very transparent about wanting to let you know what they're doing. Wear it till it's worn out or mend it. So this seems to be a lost art, and if you necessarily don't know how to mend your own clothes, I guarantee you'll be able to find somebody out there that can do it for you. So just think about like mending your clothes. I know that sometimes visible mending is starting to be a little bit more popular these days. A lot more people are learning sashiko, which is a form of stitching that is visible that you can see, especially on denim and different garments. So consider thinking about mending stuff. If you've paid good money for a pair of shoes, have it repaired. There's shoe repair people. Usually anywhere you live, you can find somebody that will do that. So have things repaired. Take the time to think about what it is you want with that garment. You can also upcycle something or restyle it. I know that not everybody can sew their own garments. So if this is not something you can do, you can also find somebody, if you have the resources to do that, that is willing to change something that you already have or make it into something else at the least. And then recycle consciously. So this is a big one because we would like to think that when we take stuff to a particular place that it's being actually resold. And a lot of people will take and leave stuff and not, it's an out of sight, out of mind idea that I've done something with it, so it's gonna go to a good place. But the reason that only 1% is usually taken care of out of what gets donated is because people aren't really thinking about what it is they brought in. So if something has the remotest tear in it, if it's worn in any way that's visible, if it's stained, or if it's dirty, it cannot be put on the floor. These places are not going to launder anybody's stuff that comes to them. So if it shows up and it was a nice thing, but it's dirty because it didn't get laundered, or it appears that way because it was shoved into the bag like wet laundry, it won't go on the floor. It just gets thrown in the pile to be baled up. So if you are taking things to people that you know is good, take it to them in a way that you would want to see it hanging there in order to sell it. If it's a vintage item, you're more probably likely to be able to have that resold if you take it to a place that focuses on vintage clothes. So if you're going to let's say a high-end consignment store and you want to get rid of some really beautiful stuff that was your mother's, and they're not a vintage place, they might take your bag, but they're not necessarily the kind of people coming there it's not going to necessarily get resold because they're not going to have that audience. Take it to a place where you have an idea of the people that are actually going to purchase that stuff. There's also there's other things to do with your garments if they can't be recycled. First of all, there's some different places I'll mention here, but one of them is called 4 Days. And what they do is they have a take-back bag, and you can actually order these plastic bags. They have a pre-labeled postage on them, and you can fill those with textiles that are damaged, torn, or in bad shape. Now, all these places that I'm going to mention require that whatever you send to be at least clean. They can be stained, worn, but they have to be laundered. They don't want stuff that's dirty. But they'll take stuff, and literally we use this in our costume shop. We use this trashy bag because we have a lot of fabric scraps from the stuff that we're building for the different shows. We now recycle those by sending them to that place. There's also Fab Scrap. There's one in New York City and in Philadelphia that does the same thing. They will take your worn out textiles and they will separate them for you, and they will put them to the right places. So now both of these places, if you donate garments that could have been resold and they're in good shape, they will separate those out and donate them to places that can sell. If it's textiles that are reusable but worn out, maybe damaged in some way, they will send those to another place that can have them remade into rags or like throw rugs, things like that. Or if it is literally a destroyed textile or scraps like we're sending from the shop, they will turn that into insulation or other things to be used. So they tell you, they're very transparent about telling you what they're doing with the stuff. There's also a company called Subset, which will they sell sustainable undergarments in 100% cotton, and they will take back any old undergarments. They have to be clean, but in any condition, they will take your stuff back and give you credit to buy some of their stuff. That's another place that's recycling actual clothes. And there's also something out there called Blue Jeans Go Green, and they will take blue jeans and you can send it directly to them, or there are stores out there that are affiliating themselves with this, and I believe Madwell is one of them. There's others, but you can take your blue jeans to those stores, any brand, any condition, and they will package them up and send them to this project. Then they are shredding the jeans and making them insulation. So if you look them up, it clearly states what they're doing with those. And then if, depending on the store you take it to, they will give you a credit to buy a new pair of jeans in their store or something like that. But those are just some ideas. Some other companies that I wanted to mention, Patagonia has sort of been one of the sustainable leading companies, but they actually have a mending program. Well, there are some other places out there, but they will take some of their own stuff and mend it for you and send it back. They also will take gently used Patagonia stuff, so that they have another website where they will sell their gently used stuff if you have donated in good shape, and they'll give you credit for the stuff you're donating towards their merchandise. There's one other place I wanted to mention was, and there's a lot of different blue jean places out there, but there's one called Mud Jeans, and they will repair their stuff too. If you send it to them and it's theirs, they will repair it for you and send it back. So there's definitely places out there that you can find if you search the internet and look. So you decide you want to do this. How do you know the company's sustainable? Well, are they conscious about the energy that they're using, and are they considering the water use that they're using? You can find this when you look them up. And the biggest thing is, are they transparent? Are they putting it out in the public? Can you find it, and is it easy to find what it is they're doing? Are they professing this and then showing results of it? Do they actually care about their workers? Are they thinking about where they're having the stuff made and considering if it's fair trade or not? And are they not using hazardous chemicals? What are the processes that these companies are using? And you can find all this on these companies, and if you can't, I would consider avoiding those companies if possible. And then also, are they being ethical? So not only are they thinking about what's happening to the actual items that they're making and the sources that they're finding it from, where is it being made? So there's definitely countries that are historically known for blatantly having disregard for certain human rights and the right of the worker. If you're getting things that have tags from those countries, I would avoid buying stuff from those places. Also, if you look at the label, you have to investigate this a little bit, but there's definitely places that you can learn more things about. Like if it says it's made in America, it has to literally have been not just the garment has to be made there, it has to be sourced from here. So it has to, the material and the garment has to be from the USA in order to say it was made here. Doesn't have to tell you who it is that's making it, because some of this does still, people are being paid below minimum wage and not treated necessarily fair in some places, but at least you know where it's being sourced. Now, for instance, in the UK, that's not as strict. And an example of that would be, because sometimes what they'll say is it has to be significantly changed in order to have the label from that place say that's where it's made. So it might say it was made in a particular place, but you don't know where it was sourced, and you don't know how much of it was made there. And for instance, excuse me, if you buy something, let's say you get a pair of shoes that say made in Italy, they only have to I believe all they have to do is be boxed up in Italy in order to have that tag. They have to finish their life in Italy and then be put in the package in order to say made in Italy. So the labels are they're very sometimes dishonest to our minds as to where they're coming from. So you really want to look into that too. Then the workers, I've talked about this before. But are they respectful to their workers? Are they being transparent about who's making their stuff? Does it actually explain more than they're just making minimum wage? Does it say that they're being offered some sort of a benefit? Does it say that they get time off? Are they working 7 days a week, or are they working 5 days a week? You want to see what it is they're actually saying and if they can prove what they're saying. And then animal welfare is becoming a much more concerning one also. So does the brand actually trace where the goods that it's using from animals and different things, is that traceable? Are they telling you where that came from? And if they're, and are they saying it in a way that's transparent so that you know that it's not coming from places that are treating, the animal welfare as if it doesn't exist? So those you really want to pay attention to. And then finally, I just wanted to offer a few resources for people who want to delve a little bit deeper. And these are just a couple, because once you get started, you can do this forever. Trust me, I have to frequently stop. But the first are just a couple of online resources. Good On You is an excellent company. They also have an app, and you can look up. They have thousands of brands that you can look up, and they give them a rating that tells you what they feel, if they're sustainable, if they're not, or if they're trying. And they'll also explain how they make that rating so you understand what it is and why they said that that particular company has that rating. Then Fashion Revolution, it's a good site to sort of keep up on current events that are happening and what they might be working towards. So as dismal as some of this sounds, I do know things are moving forward a little bit, because I recently read about the Slow Fashion Caucus that is happening in Congress, and it was the congresswoman in Maine, I think her last name's Pine Tree, or I'm sorry if I've probably murdered that, but anyway, she sort of headed this up, and they're sort of asking that President Biden use his executive order to push some things forward in a way that will slow down the fast fashion industry. And I think that the first one they did was in September. And to have goods imported into America, there has to be a certain value. And if it's below that value, it doesn't necessarily have to be the rigors of it aren't the same as being inspected and so on. So stuff comes through much more. It can be like basically brought in. So when people are ordering online from places like Shein or these other companies, it's rare. I think that the minimum is between $600 and $800. So you can buy a lot of stuff daily off of those sites, and it's just coming in mass amounts because there's nothing stopping it. There's also something that just happened in California, and I have not read on this extensively, but they just passed something that companies have to be aware of their circular consumption. So if they're producing something, they have to be responsible for it till the end of its life, even after the consumer gets rid of it. So they have to think about programs where they will take their stuff back. It's the first state that I believe is starting this. But it's promising, so it feels like it's sort of getting out there. Fashion Revolution will sort of keep you up on some of these things that are happening. If you want to read some books, there's a list of books that are excellent. Consumed by Aja Barber is a great book about fast fashion in the system, and so is Unraveled. There's a few other ones under there that are worth looking at. And then if you're the kind of person that just likes to watch about it and doesn't want to read, there's two excellent documentaries, and one is called The True Cost, That you can find on Amazon Prime. That actually delves into the issue of the workers behind fast fashion. And then River Blue is on Vimeo, and that really focuses on the environmental impact that fashion is having on the world globally. So those are all great resources. And I would like to think that we all can make a difference by just taking the time to think about this and make that first step, because it's a lot like, you know, a drop of water in an ocean, that once a few people start to do it, more people hear about it. And the problem is consumer driven, but it takes more than the consumers not shopping for this to change, because the system itself has to change. But it won't change unless enough people actually make a change and start to demand changes. So I'm very passionate about this, and I am very thankful that you are all here to listen to me, and thank you very much. Yeah. So I will take some questions if anybody has some.
My name is Ed Passarelli. I'm a parent of a double who. I think your talk is fascinating. It seems like an unrecognized environmental problem, which suggests that the congressman in Maine should be thinking about subsidies for the recycling industry, as well as our wind subsidies, our solar subsidies. My question is twofold. Number one, are there recycling methodologies that are starting to be explored in the industry? And two, are you familiar with Planet Aid, a thrift store that receives goods and says that they're environmentally sustainable? And they give to two areas, two companies that have been identified that say that 1% of the material that they're providing to Nicaragua and Guatemala is the only amount that goes into their landfill of material donated through those companies.
So I do know that there's technologies out there to recycle fibers. There's a couple of places, I believe one is in Italy. Please don't quote me on that because I'm not exactly positive, but I know there's one overseas, and I believe there's, I do know that there's a place in Richmond that is recycling textiles. And what a lot of these companies, these places are doing is they're sorting textiles out within their color, and then they're taking them back to the fiber state and creating yarns again. And then those yarns are being woven into textiles based on what designers are asking them they want. So those are two systems that are being done. I do know that there is also a couple of denim brands that are trying to, so blue jeans are one of the most polluting garment out there. And there's a company that has learned how to dye their garment, their blue jeans, in a different manner. So they are using something like 80% less toxic dyes in order to do that, and they're recycling their water so that it's being reused and purifying it and then using it that way again. There's that stonewashing, which is something that became popular in the 80s and 90s on blue jeans, is a very toxic process. And there's another company that is learning to do, like they've set up something to do that with lasers instead of actually like having somebody stand there and hand scrub or sandblast your jeans, or even like this stone washing literally takes up a lot of water because it's a washing system before we even get it. We're getting, quote unquote, our jeans worn out first because it's trendy, but that's damaging the system. So there's the problem with some of that is that these companies the companies that already exist would have to overhaul their system instead of starting from the ground up. They've already got a system in place that's really cheap, so they keep moving that way. So I think that the recycling side of this question, there are people out there that have been doing this and not well known, and it's getting more well known, so there's more people that are recycling. And I only just recently found out about the one in Richmond where they will take your textiles and shred them down back into fiber. And it's nice that they're so close. And I'm starting to see other places that are starting to put out a bin for textile waste, and they're specifically for that instead of, like clothing or whatever. They'll say textile waste. So that includes rags and old carpets and, things that you wouldn't even dawn on you. And I apologize that I can't quite recall your second half of the question.
Is it related to Planet Aid?
Oh, no, I do not know much about Planet Aid. I haven't had time to delve into that. But it sounds like they're doing a lot of what it is I just described, that they're finding places for these textiles. And because of it, there's always going to be some little bit of waste here and there. But when you think about the big picture, 1% versus what's happening now is phenomenal. So it's huge. It's awesome I'll have to look into that more. Thank you for saying it.
Thanks for raising our consciousness in this realm. I'd be interested in your list of most offending countries, and I realize it's a generalization, and many countries would be familiar to, the more villains, but be interested in that. And also, this might be a good time to mention that there are some, your talk is timely. We just dove into a purge of mostly textiles yesterday to donate to North Carolina. And there are a number of things locally that is in play. There's an airline out of this airport that is going to fly stuff to the Asheville area. There's also a truck in the Sam's Club parking lot that is done by the same fellow, Tom Powell, who does the toy lift at Hydraulic and 29 at that Exxon station. But anyway, he's got a truck out there at Sam's, evidently, that will take, he just got upgraded from a big box truck to a 52-foot rig. So anyway, the local stuff is well in play, and you could check that because like so many things, starting to think locally before
Yeah.
big. And a positive note is, it seems like a lot of young people are realizing thrifting. And that is, going to thrift stores and doing that to get better goods for less shekels.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning the local stuff. I do know that there's a couple of, there's one CIO on campus called Swap, and the students actually organize a clothing swap, and it's happening this month. So it's nice when I hear things about that, about the students in general. And it is nice to hear about local opportunities where we can donate clothes that we feel like we need to, when we're ready to purge, and it's a perfect season to purge because we're getting ready for winter, right? But a couple of the countries that I will just mention quickly is, for one, if something is made in Bangladesh, a few years, well, more than a few years ago, but there was a factory in Dhaka, Bangladesh, that collapsed, and a lot of people died in that collapse, and those workers were afraid to walk back into that building because they could see cracks in the wall, and they were forced to walk back in and work. And then that was the day that the factory collapsed from the weight of the workers in that building and the machinery, and over 1,000 people died. Well, that was on the news for a while, but that same year, we spent more money than we had any year before on fast fashion. And a lot of the labels that were on the ground during that cleanup were labels that we all shopped from. And that quickly it came out, and I think that's when people started to realize there was something about fast fashion, but it hasn't made a huge change. So that's a big one. A lot of times China or Sri Lanka, they're places that I would historically probably not shop from, but there's other places, and it's worth investigating. Okay.
My name is Christina Schultz. I actually have a degree in fashion design, but chose not to be a part of the industry because of the things I learned through various internships as part of my life, student life at the university. But I was wondering if you heard of B Corps, businesses that are certified by a B Lab, an organization that created a very rigorous social and environmental metrics by which they certified companies, including apparel companies. And for the companies to sustain their certification, they don't have to. They don't only need to maintain their score. They have to make it better for the next certification year. And I think it's a biannual because it's so rigorous. And companies, especially small businesses, it's such a huge toll on the time they have to invest in their processes if they have to work on their certification every year. But there is a very good system by which they measure. They actually have a motto that's called "Measure What Matters," and the companies who are happy to embrace those metrics, they already do things right, and they want to be a part of this ecosystem where they are. They feel like they belong, and to make for the consumers to find them easier.
Absolutely. I have heard of this. And I just want to mention quick before we finish that Anjali Jolie actually is starting her own company that is a B Corp, and I believe it's going to be called Atelier Atelier Jolie or something. But she's starting it as a B Corp, and there's a line that I think is going to be coming out soon. So it would be interesting to see what she's doing because it's nice to have a name that would maybe influence other people. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you all for coming out and joining us online. On behalf of the Lifetime Learning Program and the Alumni Association, we have a small gift for you.
Thank you.
Thank you for speaking with us today. And if you'll fast go to this next slide, this talk is being recorded, so here's the QR code to find us on the Lifetime Learning website. And enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.